What if I told you that you're only using a fraction of the potential behind your Microsoft 365 data? There's a hidden tool built for professionals like you that can unlock insights from Teams, Outlook, SharePoint, and more with just one endpoint. What is the Microsoft Graph API and why should you care? The Microsoft Graph API is a tool that sits at the heart of Microsoft 365, yet many users haven't fully realized its potential. At its core, it's a single interface where you can access data from all Microsoft 365 services. This includes Teams, SharePoint, Outlook, OneDrive, and even Microsoft Planner. Now, let me break that down in a simple way. Imagine all your Microsoft 365 data as different books located in various rooms of a house. Each room might be a different platform like Teams or Outlook, and each has its own rules and quirks. The Graph API acts like a master key that not only opens every room, but also lets you organize and use all your data as if it were in one single library. Now, you might wonder, why should I even care about this? Let's address that. One of the most frustrating challenges for Microsoft 365 users is the scattered nature of their data. You've probably experienced this if you've ever had to gather information across different platforms. Say you're a manager trying to track how your team collaborates. You might check Teams to see the frequency of channel conversations. Then you'd jump into SharePoint to figure out who's working on which files. Next, you'd open Outlook to get an idea of email traffic and communication patterns. By the time you've pieced all of this together, it's time to start over because the data has already changed. It's inefficient and, let's be honest, often frustrating. Let's think about a specific example. Imagine you're asked to analyze Teams usage data. Specifically, you're tasked with finding out how often your team uses chat during meetings. Without a central access point, you'd need to pull data from different sections manually, file it in separate spreadsheets, then spend hours trying to make sense of it. And this is just for one task. Think about what happens when the scope of the analysis grows, or if you need to do this regularly. Not only is this process time-consuming, but it's also prone to errors. And for organizations, this fragmented approach can hold back productivity and decision-making. Here's where the Graph API steps in to change the game. It doesn't just simplify access, it consolidates all that information in one place. For example, let's say you're a PowerBI user trying to create a report on team engagement. With Graph API, you don't need to dig through multiple sources or export and clean up messy data sets. Instead, the API allows you to retrieve all the necessary data directly. Think of it as a shortcut that connects your Power BI dashboard directly to Teams, SharePoint, and Outlook. It eliminates those extra steps like manual exports, file uploads, and formatting adjustments. What makes this even more transformative is how it can redefine the way you approach business data. Instead of seeing Microsoft 365 as isolated services, Graph API allows you to treat it as a connected ecosystem. For example, when you combine Teams and Outlook data, you might uncover insights about how communication methods impact productivity. Or by pulling SharePoint activity stats, you can learn who collaborates most effectively within your team. This level of access isn't just convenient. It opens the door to deeper analysis and smarter decisions. The best part is that you don't need to be a software developer to make use of it. While Graph API does have advanced features for technical users, its basic functionality can be accessed even by those who are just starting with data integration. Whether you're working in IT, business intelligence, or management, this tool has value for anyone looking to streamline workflows or unlock insights hidden in their data. Now, let's circle back to what Graph API really does. In short, it acts as a bridge between you and your Microsoft 365 data, providing a unified access point to everything you need. It removes the barriers created by working with fragmented data sources. You no longer need to jump from platform to platform or worry about missing crucial details because everything is collected in one place. It's like having a single dashboard that shows you the big picture while also letting you zoom into specific areas of interest. But we're not stopping here. Graph API does more than just consolidate. It unlocks types of data you may not even realize you have. For example, it can surface trends in Outlook email traffic, patterns in SharePoint activity, or even metrics related to how your team uses Teams channels. This brings us to the next exciting part of our discussion. Exactly what kinds of hidden data Graph API gives you access to and how you can use that to your advantage. Stay tuned. unlocking the hidden data across Microsoft 365. What if you could access Teams data, SharePoint activity, and Outlook patterns all in one place? Think about how much easier your workflow could be if you didn't have to bounce between platforms just to get the data you need. This is exactly what makes Microsoft Graph API such a powerful tool. It pulls key data from across Microsoft 365 services into a single unified access point. Let's start by understanding what kinds of data are available through Microsoft Graph API. First, there's Teams data. This includes metrics like channel activity, messages sent, meeting attendance, and even who's engaging the most in those meetings. Then there's SharePoint data, which covers file activities like uploads, modifications, and sharing statistics that reveal how your team collaborates on key projects. And lastly, there's Outlook data, tracking email patterns, such as response times, email volumes, and trends in communication with customers or team members. These are just a few examples, but they already demonstrate how this API is designed to give visibility into the day-to-day operations within an organization. Without Graph API, gathering this level of information can get messy fast. For instance, if you wanted to analyze Teams usage data, you'd have to manually navigate through Teams' built-in reporting tools, which only provide a surface-level view and aren't great when you want to customize the metrics you're tracking. Then SharePoint data would be a completely separate task, requiring exports from activity logs, which may not even provide the insights you're hoping to uncover. Combine that with Outlook email patterns, where you'd need to dig into activity metrics for each user separately, and you'll quickly find yourself overwhelmed. In short, manual exporting across these services can become a major obstacle, both in terms of wasted time and limited insights. To see why this is valuable, let's consider some real examples. Teams metrics provide vital insight into collaboration trends. If a large portion of your team is using private chats for critical business communication instead of posting updates in team channels, it may signal a need for cultural or operational adjustments. SharePoint activity, meanwhile, lets you track who's updating or sharing key project documents, which can reveal if certain teams are overburdened due to the volume of activity they're handling. Then there's Outlook. Email patterns provide a snapshot of how your team communicates, whether it's tracking average response times or identifying which external clients need more attention based on the volume or depth of communication. Now imagine bringing all these data points together. What happens when you correlate Teams meeting trends with SharePoint file activity? For example, consistent file updates right after a meeting may indicate productive follow-ups. Or consider combining email communication patterns with Teams chat insights. This could help you spot teams that collaborate heavily through Teams but fall short on email updates required for external clients. Combining data sources creates a full picture, one where you can visualize, analyze, and take action based on complete, accurate insights. This capability to merge datasets, automate processes, and extract actionable insights puts the Graph API in a league of its own. Instead of siloed reporting tools that keep Teams, SharePoint, and Outlook data separate, the API connects these services seamlessly. What changes is not just the ease of access, but the ability to see connections and patterns across platforms. For example, you might find that email backlogs from certain customers consistently correlate with low engagement in your sales team's channel. That insight could help you improve both internal processes and client satisfaction. The Graph API doesn't stop at simply providing access. It gets into the specific details of what works for your organization. Think about SharePoint activity logs. Instead of just knowing how many files were edited in a single day, you can retrieve detailed metrics on which teams were involved, how long it took to complete those updates, and whether those files were shared externally. This level of granularity allows for highly targeted decision-making. If inefficiencies show up in SharePoint collaboration, such as delayed document reviews or bottlenecks caused by too many file permissions, these insights can help you identify and fix the root cause. Similarly, for Outlook data, automated processing through Graph API can do much more than monitor response rates. It can track the time of day where emails are often neglected, showing blind spots in communication or areas where more resources are needed. For sales teams, for instance, layering in customer response patterns alongside internal email traffic could reveal missed follow-ups or even areas where automation could step in to assist your staff. These aren't just hypothetical scenarios. Companies that implement Graph API have seen real business benefits. For example, one organization used combined datasets from Teams and SharePoint to uncover inefficiencies in remote collaboration. By correlating low channel activity with limited document sharing metrics, they identified teams that needed additional collaboration tools or training. Another business used Outlook and CRM data to understand how customer outreach frequency impacted sales conversions, leading to a restructuring of follow-up procedures that increased client retention rates. Combining data is not just about increased efficiency, it's about opening up new avenues to analyze and address challenges. Think of it this way. Individual data points like Teams chat logs or SharePoint file metrics are like puzzle pieces scattered across a table. By themselves, they might show small parts of the picture. But Graph API enables you to piece them together, providing clarity on what's actually going on across your entire organization. And the best part, automating these insights saves hours, if not days, of manual data gathering and processing. Automation is what truly makes the Graph API a game changer. Instead of requiring a team member to manually log into different platforms, download files, and compile spreadsheets, the API lets you set up pipelines that pull in updated data at regular intervals. This centralization not only saves time, but also ensures the data remains accurate and up-to-date, which is critical for fast-moving organizations. Let's focus on the bigger picture now. Beyond individual data sets, combining data points from Teams, SharePoint, and Outlook through Graph API allows businesses to create a highly detailed map of their operations. These insights can highlight the overlaps between collaboration, communication, and productivity, providing leaders with actionable data to make better strategic decisions. For example, you could analyze how meetings impact overall project completion rates, correlating Teams meeting trends with SharePoint file activity timelines, or you could track how internal communication patterns in Outlook correlate with external client engagement, giving your sales team better insight into where to focus its efforts. At this point, you might be asking, what's next? How do we take all this data and turn it into something truly actionable? Here's a hint. One of the most powerful tools for making sense of Graph API data lies in PowerBI. You can connect the API directly to PowerBI and create dashboards that go beyond basic metrics, visualizing data in ways that provide meaningful insights. Whether it's tracking team productivity, identifying collaboration bottlenecks, or monitoring customer communication patterns, PowerBI becomes the canvas where Graph API data comes to life. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at what this looks like in practice and walk through examples of how Teams data in particular can be used to create actionable insights for your business. Connecting Teams data for actionable insights. Tracking Teams meeting trends can feel like a never-ending cycle of manual effort, especially if you rely on attendance reports or exported data to uncover participation patterns. If you've ever struggled with questions like who's consistently attending meetings or how engaged are our teams in chats and channels, you're not alone. These insights are critical for understanding productivity and collaboration, but gathering them manually can eat up hours of your time. That's where Microsoft Graph API comes in. By connecting directly to your team's data, Graph API simplifies the process, giving you a clear and up-to-date view with just a few clicks. Microsoft Graph API integrates seamlessly with Teams, acting as a bridge between your organization's communication data and the tools you already use to analyze it. It pulls data directly from Teams to help you track metrics like meeting attendance, chat engagement, and channel activity. Whether you're monitoring how often certain channels are used, analyzing attendance trends across recurring meetings, or identifying which teams collaborate the most through chats, Graph API takes the guesswork out of the equation. Instead of hunting for reports across different tabs or exporting fragmented data for analysis, you now have everything centralized and accessible. The problem with traditional methods of analyzing Teams data is that they're not built for scale or automation. Imagine you're tasked with analyzing meeting participation over the past quarter. For each meeting, you'd need to download attendance reports individually, combine those into a single dataset, and then manually clean up the data to remove duplicates or irrelevant details. Even if you're tech-savvy enough to automate parts of this process using Excel or scripts, there's still the issue of keeping the data updated. Now, multiply this effort by the number of meetings your organization holds in just 1 month, and it quickly becomes overwhelming. But with Graph API, you can bypass this entire process. For example, the API lets you directly query meeting data, like attendance rates and participant lists. This means you don't have to manually compile reports anymore. Better yet, you can automate these queries, so you're always working with the latest information. If you use Power BI, this becomes even more powerful because you can create dashboards that automatically refresh as new data flows through the API. Suddenly, tracking meeting trends goes from a manual time-consuming task to an automated system that provides insights in real time. One practical example of this is monitoring how attendance trends shift across time periods or departments. Let's say your company holds weekly project update meetings. Using Graph API, you can track which teams consistently attend, who skips meetings frequently, and whether participation drops during specific seasons or after holidays. This insight might reveal patterns that help you optimize meeting times, improve agenda relevance, or reduce redundant discussions. For instance, if you notice that certain departments have lower attendance compared to others, it might indicate that the discussions don't align with their priorities, or worse, that they're struggling with capacity issues. By taking action based on these insights, you can create meetings that are more effective and aligned with your team's needs. Now let's talk about chat engagement. Understanding how people use Teams chat and channels can uncover important details about collaboration. With Graph API, you can analyze activity at granular levels, like how often a channel is used compared to others, or how employees use direct messages versus group chats. This information provides a real-time view of how work gets done within your organization. For example, a sudden drop in engagement within a project-based channel could signal that a task is nearing completion, or conversely, that team members are stuck and not collaborating effectively. Power BI makes it easy to visualize these patterns and turn them into actionable insights. Imagine creating a dashboard that tracks channel activity alongside meeting attendance, so you can identify correlations between conversations and productivity. For instance, you might find that teams with higher chat activity tend to meet project deadlines more consistently. On the flip side, low activity in both channels and meetings could signal disengagement, pointing to teams that might need re-energizing. Visualizations like these provide management with a clear snapshot of what's happening in the organization without needing to sift through endless raw data. Another feature worth mentioning is how Graph API can be used to measure the health of your team's channels over time. Specifically, you can track metrics like the number of active users, posts per channel, and reaction trends. A thriving channel, for example, might show steady growth in the number of participants actively contributing messages or reacting to others' posts. If you notice a drop-off over time, it might signal that the purpose of the channel is no longer clear, or that team members are finding other ways to communicate outside of Teams. Once again, these insights can guide interventions to improve communication. What really sets Microsoft Graph API apart is how it saves time by automating the entire collection process. Without it, gathering this type of Teams data could require multiple steps, from logging into the Teams admin center to downloading specific reports every week or month. On the other hand, Graph API minimizes manual intervention by letting you set up automated pipelines that fetch data at regular intervals. This not only reduces the risk of errors, but also ensures you're always working with the most current data. Let's say your leadership team asks for a report every month on engagement trends across Teams channels. Without Graph API, you'd have to manually create that report each time, pulling separate data for channels, chats, and attendance. But with the API, you can set up a workflow once that automatically updates the data and generates the report. Tools like Power BI can then take this data and turn it into clear visual insights that are ready to present. This means less time spent compiling reports and more time focusing on what the data is telling you. The payoff here is huge when it comes to answering critical business questions. Teams data collected through Graph API can reveal trends that influence how decisions are made. For example, if your organization relies heavily on collaboration between different departments, knowing which channels and chats are most active or least active can guide you in improving cross-department communication. On the other hand, if you're trying to understand why certain projects are falling behind, analyzing meeting attendance alongside engagement data might point to specific team workflows that need adjustment. These aren't just productivity metrics, they're actionable insights that can directly shape strategy. And we're really just scratching the surface. Teams data is only one part of the story. In the next section, we'll explore how Microsoft Graph API lets you unlock hidden collaboration patterns within SharePoint. By connecting to SharePoint data, you can dive even deeper into file sharing activity, document workflows, and bottlenecks in your organization's collaboration process. Analyzing SharePoint collaboration patterns. What can your SharePoint activity data tell you about team collaboration? If you're thinking, not much, it's probably because accessing collaboration patterns hidden in SharePoint isn't easy. Yet, SharePoint is where much of the actual work happens. File uploads, document edits, file sharing. These activities can paint a rich picture of how your team works together, but only if you know how to access and interpret that data. This is where Microsoft Graph API changes everything. By connecting directly to SharePoint, the API brings valuable data about file activity and collaboration patterns into focus, allowing you to uncover inefficiencies and track team dynamics more effectively. Let's start with how this works. Graph API can connect to your organization's SharePoint libraries and surfaces metrics on everything from file check-ins and edits to sharing and access trends. In a typical day, your team interacts with SharePoint by uploading new documents, editing shared files, leaving comments, and setting sharing permissions. All of this activity is stored as data, and it tells a story about how people are collaborating or sometimes why workflows are stalling. Without a tool like Graph API, this data is often scattered and buried. Built-in tools like the SharePoint Admin Center may only give you high-level summaries or the ability to pull a handful of reports at a time. The process is manual and doesn't give you easy access to the granularity you need. For example, let's say you want to know which team members contribute most to a shared project folder. Maybe you're managing cross-departmental collaboration and you've noticed that certain tasks are falling behind schedule. A deeper look at file activity, who's pulling the weight, who's consistently editing or updating shared documents, and who may only be passively viewing, could give you the clarity to allocate resources more effectively. But without Graph API, getting clear answers would take hours of manual digging through logs and folders. Now compare that to using the API. File activity data such as check-ins, edits, new uploads, and sharing metrics can be accessed almost instantaneously. For example, you can query the API to find out which files in a specific library have been edited most frequently in the last month, determine who made those edits, and track whether those files were shared internally or externally. This is the kind of detailed, actionable insight that is nearly impossible to obtain with traditional built-in tools. And it goes beyond just saving time. It helps you understand how well your team is collaborating and where there might be obstacles to better efficiency. Another example is document check-ins. Checking in and out is a feature that teams use to ensure that updates to files don't conflict, and the data around this activity can reveal a lot. For instance, imagine you notice that certain team members constantly have files checked out for long periods. With Graph API, you could flag this trend, dig deeper into why it's happening, and potentially resolve bottlenecks before they impact deadlines. Small inefficiencies like this might not seem critical at first glance, but over time they add up. Reacting quickly means maintaining steady momentum with fewer interruptions. Sharing activity is another area where Graph API reveals important collaboration trends. When your team shares files, it indicates work readiness and collaboration, but it also highlights potential risks, especially if sensitive files are being overshared. Before Graph API, finding out who's sharing what and with whom might have involved downloading access logs, cleaning messy data, and piecing together incomplete information. Graph API replaces that guesswork with requests that can drill down into sharing activity. For instance, you might want to identify files shared externally over a specific time period, track which employees are consistently sharing the most files, or even determine how many people are accessing a file after it's been shared. Every metric provides another layer of understanding about how work is being distributed and whether your collaboration patterns align with organizational goals. Let's bring this data to life with PowerBI. Once you have access to detailed SharePoint metrics through Graph API, visualizing that data becomes a game changer. Instead of staring at spreadsheets, Imagine a dashboard that tracks key collaboration indicators across your team or department. For instance, you could create a graph that visualizes the number of file edits by user over time. This might show you who your most active contributors are, or if activity on certain files spikes during critical project deadlines. You could also use heat maps to display where sharing activity occurs most frequently, highlighting which documents or folders are at the center of your team's collaboration efforts. Another great visualization in Power BI could focus on revealing bottlenecks. For example, you could build a report to monitor how long files typically stay checked out, which team members are moving projects along by editing files quickest, and where collaboration slows when certain documents remain untouched. These types of reports not only help teams optimize workflows, but also give leadership clear, actionable insights that can drive broader organizational decisions. Are certain projects too dependent on one individual? Are there workflows that need tweaking to distribute responsibilities more evenly? These are the questions you can answer when you analyze SharePoint data in a structured way. One of the most valuable aspects of visualizing SharePoint data is its ability to highlight inefficiencies that might otherwise go unnoticed. For example, say you find that a key document has been edited repeatedly by multiple users but with little progress. This could indicate confusion about responsibilities or a lack of clear version control. Or perhaps you notice that certain files in a shared library are rarely accessed even though they're supposed to support an ongoing project. This could reveal either that the team isn't using its resources effectively or that certain files need to be restructured or better communicated to the team. Once you start uncovering these inefficiencies, you can make data-driven improvements to your workflows. Maybe you introduce regular check-ins for large projects based on what you've learned about file activity trends. Or perhaps you decide to adopt stricter version control settings for documents that multiple teams edit concurrently. Some of these changes might seem small, but collectively they can contribute to smoother workflows and a noticeable boost in your team's productivity. And it's not just about fixing inefficiencies. Graph API reveals positive patterns too. For instance, by tracking file sharing metrics, you might discover clusters of highly active collaboration. Maybe a specific team stands out for consistently sharing documents with key stakeholders within set deadlines. Recognizing and replicating these effective habits across the organization can accelerate progress. Another significant benefit comes from monitoring external sharing. This is key for organizations that collaborate with clients, vendors, and external partners. For example, imagine you want to track how often certain client-facing files are being accessed and shared. With Graph API, this data can be pulled easily, allowing you to analyze client engagement and identify opportunities to strengthen those relationships. Similarly, by visualizing this data in Power BI, you can present these insights in a way that's easy to understand, whether the audience is internal stakeholders or external clients. The broader value of analyzing SharePoint data through Graph API lies in the level of transparency and control it provides. Without it, much of the story behind file activity remains hidden, which means inefficiencies persist simply because they can't be seen. Graph API not only uncovers those hidden stories but also aligns your data with key business goals, whether increasing productivity, improving teamwork, or safeguarding sensitive information. By automating the data collection process and bringing insights front and center, you're able to focus less on operational roadblocks and more on strategic opportunities. As we move forward, remember that your SharePoint data isn't isolated. Combining it with other data sets like email communication trends or Teams engagement metrics can create an even fuller picture of how your organization collaborates and communicates. For instance, combining file sharing trends from SharePoint with meeting attendance data from Teams might reveal overlaps between collaboration and delays. Or pairing SharePoint insights with email patterns from Outlook might show where document workflows align or clash with communication habits. These bigger picture relationships are where the real strength of Graph API lies. Speaking of Outlook, it's a treasure trove of untapped opportunities for analyzing how your team communicates. What if your email analytics could reveal patterns that improve client follow-ups or streamline internal communication? That's exactly what we're going to explore next. By analyzing Outlook data through Graph API, you'll gain insights into email volume, response times, and customer interactions that are critical for refining communication workflows and even boosting sales. Let's head into that section now. Unlocking insights from Outlook email analytics. Could your email patterns reveal untapped sales opportunities? Think about how much information flows through email every day. Customer inquiries, sales follow-ups, internal discussions. Buried in all of this activity are insights that could transform how your organization communicates, prioritizes tasks, and even builds client relationships. But without a tool to analyze this mountain of data, manually identifying patterns or trends is nearly impossible. With Microsoft Graph API, you can break through these barriers by connecting directly to Outlook, automating data collection, and uncovering key insights about your communication habits. Outlook is an essential platform for many organizations, serving as the primary hub for internal and external communication. But even though most of us spend a significant portion of the workday in our inboxes, the metrics around email communication often remain a mystery. Graph API changes that by giving you access to data like email volume, response times, and sender-recipient trends. These metrics are more than numbers. They provide a snapshot of how your organization interacts with clients, how quickly teams respond to critical issues, and where communication bottlenecks might exist. The challenge with getting this data manually is the sheer volume of activity that happens in Outlook. Let's say you want to analyze response times for client emails to measure how effectively your customer support team is performing. Without Graph API, this would mean sifting through dozens or even hundreds of inboxes, gathering response timestamps, and compiling the information into a spreadsheet. Even with advanced filtering capabilities, the process is time-consuming and prone to human error. And let's not forget that email activity changes constantly, so by the time you've finished your analysis, the data might already be outdated. This is where Graph API makes a difference. Instead of manually piecing together data, you can use the API to set up automated queries that pull key metrics directly from Outlook. For example, you could retrieve information on email sent and receive times, the frequency of communication with specific clients, or which team members are responsible for the majority of outgoing emails. Whether you're analyzing daily trends or digging into historical data, Graph API gives you instant access to what you need without unnecessary steps. To put this into perspective, let's take the example of a sales team. Imagine you want to understand how frequently your team follows up with specific leads after an initial contact. Using Graph API, you can track the volume of outgoing emails sent to certain clients, how quickly follow-ups occur, and whether those clients respond in a timely manner. When you combine this data with sales information, such as conversion rates, you might notice patterns that were otherwise invisible. For instance, do quicker response times result in a higher success rate? Are there specific team members whose communication habits lead to better customer engagement? With this level of visibility, you can make informed decisions about where to focus your efforts. Power BI takes this one step further, enabling you to visualize these insights in an intuitive and interactive way. Let's say you create a dashboard that pairs email response metrics with sales performance data. You might see that certain clients receive frequent follow-ups but still have lower conversion rates, signaling the need for a different approach. Or you could identify clients who receive minimal attention but consistently result in sales, suggesting they should be prioritized more heavily. These visualizations not only make the data easier to interpret, but also highlight actionable opportunities for improving communication strategies. Another valuable application of Graph API is measuring response time trends. Response time is a critical metric in both customer service and sales. Clients often judge an organization's professionalism based on how quickly they receive replies to inquiries or support requests. By leveraging Graph API, you can track average response times across your team, department, or even individual users. You might discover that response times fluctuate depending on the time of day of the week, or the volume of incoming requests. For instance, are emails received on Fridays typically answered slower than those received earlier in the week? Are high-priority clients receiving faster responses compared to general inquiries? These insights can help you allocate resources more effectively and ensure timely communication across the board. Automating this type of analysis is not just convenient, it's transformative. Think about the time it takes to manually review email threads, calculate averages, and filter out irrelevant data. With Graph API, these tasks can be fully automated, making it possible to generate updated reports at regular intervals with minimal effort. By connecting this data to Power BI, you can even create automated alerts. For example, you could set up a notification if average response times exceed a certain threshold or if a key client hasn't received a follow-up within 24 hours. These proactive measures help you stay ahead of potential issues instead of reacting after the fact. Let's consider another example, tracking email volume for key client accounts. For businesses that rely heavily on account-based management, understanding how much attention individual clients receive is critical. Graph API allows you to analyze email metrics at this granular level. For instance, you might look at how many emails your team sends to a top-tier client versus how many they receive in return. This could reveal clients who are over-communicating, under-communicating, or slipping through the cracks entirely. When paired with performance data, such as revenue generated per client, you gain a clearer picture of how communication habits influence results. This type of analysis also extends beyond client relationships. Internal communication is just as important, especially for larger organizations where effective collaboration between teams or departments can significantly affect outcomes. Using Graph API, you can track internal email patterns to identify trends, inefficiencies, or gaps in communication. For example, if certain messages consistently go unanswered, it could indicate a need for clearer workflows or better task delegation. On the other hand, frequent back-and-forth emails might suggest that a process is more complicated than it needs to be. These insights give you the data you need to refine internal systems and improve overall efficiency. One of the most significant advantages of using Graph API is its ability to combine email metrics with other data sources for a more comprehensive analysis. For instance, say you connect email activity data with customer sentiment analysis. By correlating the tone of client emails with response times and the volume of communication, you might uncover patterns about client satisfaction. Perhaps clients who express frustration in their emails are more likely to leave negative reviews if they don't receive quick responses, or maybe frequent communication leads to better client retention rates. These combined insights allow you to take actionable steps, like prioritizing faster follow-ups for at-risk clients or offering additional support to those with complex needs. Another example of data pairing is layering email analysis with marketing efforts. By connecting Graph API email metrics with CRM or marketing automation tools, you can track how outreach campaigns translate into actual client interactions. For instance, do targeted marketing emails generate more replies or engagement compared to general newsletters? Are there specific times during a campaign when clients are most responsive? Answering these questions provides critical guidance for timing follow-ups, optimizing campaigns, and improving overall effectiveness. It's not just about knowing what happened, it's about understanding why it happened and how to do it better next time. Let's talk briefly about the broader implications of automating email analysis with Graph API. Traditionally, gaining insights like these would require weeks of manual effort. By contrast, automation gives you the ability to act in real time. If you can track response metrics, client engagement, and high-performing communication strategies as they happen, you're no longer limited to reactive decision-making. Instead, you can proactively adapt your approach to make smarter, faster decisions that positively impact your business. Ultimately, leveraging email analytics through Graph API doesn't just improve efficiency, it enhances relationships. Whether it's by responding to inquiries faster, tailoring follow-ups based on engagement trends, or addressing issues before they escalate, these insights ensure that clients feel valued and prioritized. And for internal teams, streamlined communication workflows mean fewer miscommunications and more time spent on high-value tasks. Before we wrap up this section, let's circle back to why this matters. Email analytics, when done right, provide an unmatched window into organizational communication, both internally and externally. With Graph API, you're not just measuring activity, you're uncovering the story behind the numbers. Whether it's optimizing internal collaboration, enhancing customer engagement, or identifying missed opportunities, the potential for actionable insights is enormous. Up until now, we've talked a lot about the possibilities Graph API offers. But when handling sensitive data like emails or client information, there's one critical factor you can't ignore: security. How do you ensure that your data is safe while using tools like Graph API? What's the risk of over-permissioning and how can you avoid it? In the next section, we'll explore the security considerations you need to keep in mind when working with Graph API, along with practical tips to keep your data protected. Security considerations when using Graph API. How secure is your data when using Microsoft Graph API? It's a question that every organization should be asking, especially as you begin tapping into the vast amount of data available through the API. While the Graph API opens up exciting opportunities for data analysis and automation, it also requires thoughtful attention to data security. When handling sensitive business data, whether it's email, communications, document activity, or metrics from teams, missteps in permissions or configurations could expose your organization to unnecessary risks. To start, it's important to understand why security is such a critical consideration. The Microsoft Graph API serves as a central gateway to the heart of your Microsoft 365 environment. Data from Teams, Outlook, SharePoint, and more can be accessed through a single endpoint. While this convenience is powerful, it also means that any vulnerabilities in how the API is configured could provide unauthorized users with access to sensitive information. This is why getting security right isn't just an optional step, it's an essential part of using Graph API in a responsible and effective way. One of the biggest risks comes from misconfigured permissions. When you use Graph API, you assign different permission levels to your app or script, determining what data it can access. These permissions are based on the principle of least privilege, meaning the app should only have access to the data and operations it absolutely needs to perform its function, and nothing more. However, a common mistake that organizations make is granting excessive permissions, either because it seems easier or because the implications aren't fully understood. For example, if an app requires permissions to read team names within Microsoft Teams, granting it full write access to Teams data is unnecessary and could lead to unintended consequences. Granting excessive permissions is not just a theoretical concern, it's a real risk. Imagine an internal tool that was built to analyze SharePoint activity. To keep the setup simple, someone allows the app to request permissions to manage files instead of just reading activity logs. If the app is compromised, an attacker could potentially edit, delete, or move critical business documents. Similarly, apps with excessive permissions could inadvertently expose sensitive emails or Teams communications to unauthorized users or systems. That's why minimizing permissions is not just best practice, it's a cornerstone of a secure API implementation. To avoid these risks, it's essential to clearly define what the app needs to do upfront. Start by identifying the data it requires, whether it's the names of files, meeting attendance logs, or chat activity, and assign only those permissions necessary for that functionality. Microsoft provides both delegated and application permissions in Graph API, and knowing the difference is key. Delegated permissions are tied to a specific user, meaning the API only has access to data the user already has access to. Application permissions, on the other hand, grant broader access that operates independently of a specific user account. While application permissions are useful for background processes or automated workflows, they should be handled with extra caution since they often have higher levels of access. Another best practice is regularly auditing the permissions assigned to your Graph API apps. Over time, your organization's needs may change, and permissions that were once necessary may no longer be required. If unused permissions are left in place, they become a potential vulnerability. Establishing a process to review and clean up permissions on a routine basis can significantly reduce the attack surface for your API connections. Microsoft Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, provides tools to help monitor and manage permissions, making it easier to catch and correct any misconfigurations. Another risk to consider is how authentication is handled when connecting to Graph API. Authentication relies on Azure AD and often involves tokens. Think of these as digital keys that grant access to your Microsoft 365 environment. These tokens need to be stored securely and refreshed regularly to maintain access without exposing sensitive credentials. One common mistake is embedding authentication details, such as client secrets or access tokens, directly into scripts or code bases. If these scripts are stored in shared repositories or environments with insufficient security controls, an attacker could extract the credentials and misuse them to gain unauthorized access. A safer approach involves using Azure Managed Identities or secure key vaults to manage and protect these credentials. Azure Key Vault, for example, allows you to store secrets like API keys in a secure encrypted environment that integrates with your applications. This ensures that tokens and client secrets aren't exposed, even if someone gains access to the underlying code or script configurations. It's also important to enforce the use of multi-factor authentication, MFA, wherever possible to add another layer of protection to your API connections. Monitoring activity associated with your Graph API apps is another critical piece of the security puzzle. By setting up logging and alerts, you can keep track of how the API is being used, who is requesting access, and whether there are any signs of unusual activity. Azure AD provides auditing tools that allow you to monitor token issuance, API calls, and permission changes in real time. If an app begins requesting data it typically doesn't access, or if requests spike unexpectedly, those are red flags that might indicate misuse or a potential compromise. Unfortunately, one of the most common mistakes organizations make is overlooking these monitoring tools entirely. Without proper visibility into API activity, unauthorized access or misuse can go unnoticed for weeks or even months, only being discovered after significant damage has already been done. Setting up alerts based on usage thresholds or suspicious patterns ensures you're notified as soon as something seems off. For instance, if an app suddenly starts pulling large amounts of data from Outlook or SharePoint, an alert could flag this behavior for immediate review. Another point to keep in mind is training developers and IT administrators on the implications of API security. Because Graph API permissions and configurations are unique compared to traditional application management, it's critical that relevant teams understand how to handle these tools responsibly. Missteps like granting consent to third-party apps without vetting their security protocols can create vulnerabilities no matter how robust the rest of your infrastructure is. Taking the time to train your team on best practices for API security ensures that everyone involved understands the risks and responsibilities. So, what does a secure Graph API setup actually look like? First, it involves using the principle of least privilege to limit permissions to only what's required. Second, it includes secure storage for authentication tokens, avoiding any hard coding of sensitive credentials. Third, it relies on the Azure AD monitoring and auditing tools to track usage and catch potential issues early. Finally, it places a strong emphasis on team training and awareness, ensuring that everyone who interacts with the API understands its security implications. Here's an example to illustrate why these steps matter. Consider a company using Graph API to analyze Teams channel usage. Initially, the app was set up with permissions to only read channel activity. Over time, new features were added to the app, and someone granted it write permissions to certain files in SharePoint, thinking it was necessary for the new functionality. However, that feature didn't require access to SharePoint at all, leaving the app with unnecessary permissions. Months later, the app's authentication tokens were accidentally exposed in a public code repository. Had an attacker spotted this, they could have used the right permissions to alter or delete sensitive files in SharePoint. Regular audits of permissions and proper token management could have prevented this scenario entirely. The need for security becomes even greater as organizations start combining Graph API data with other sources. When merging data from Microsoft 365 with external systems like customer relationship management, CRM, or enterprise resource planning, ERP tools, it's essential to ensure the data's integrity and that only authorized systems are involved. A single misstep in permissioning or authentication for Graph API can lead to external systems accessing data they weren't intended to see. Following best practices ensures that as your data ecosystems grow, they remain secure. Ultimately, while the Graph API provides enormous value in unlocking insights and automating workflows, its power comes with a responsibility to protect the data it accesses. Focusing on permissions, secure token management, monitoring, and regular audits ensures that your API implementations are not only effective, but also secure. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at how combining Graph API data with external sources amplifies this tool's value, creating new opportunities for more comprehensive analysis and decision-making. Let's explore how this integration works and the game-changing insights it can provide. Combining Graph API data with other sources. What happens when you merge Graph API data with external business data? Think about it. You already know the value of connecting to Microsoft 365 data through Graph API. It gives you insights into Teams usage, SharePoint collaboration metrics, and Outlook email patterns. But this is just one layer of your organization's overall data landscape. Most businesses rely on multiple platforms for sales, marketing, customer relationship management, CRM, and more. These systems often operate in silos, making it difficult to see the full picture. By combining Graph API data with other sources, you can break down these barriers and uncover actionable insights that drive smarter decisions. Let's start with the basics. The real power of Graph API comes from its ability to unify data across Microsoft 365 services. When you take that consolidated data and link it with other systems in Power BI, you create a central hub where all the information can be analyzed together. Power BI is perfect for this because it allows you to connect different data sources, establish relationships between them, and visualize the results in one clean dashboard. For example, think about using Teams data from Graph API alongside CRM data from Salesforce or HubSpot. Suddenly, you're not just looking at Teams usage metrics, you're seeing how team collaboration correlates with sales outcomes. The main challenge that businesses face here is working with siloed data. CRM systems store customer interactions, lead data, and sales performance. Meanwhile, productivity platforms like Teams and SharePoint manage internal collaboration and operational workflows. These two sets of data often live in completely separate systems, forcing teams to work manually to piece the insights together. Imagine trying to align sales data with the productivity of your team, like tracking how follow-ups with clients impact project delivery timelines. Without integration, you'd probably export information from both platforms into messy spreadsheets, spend hours cleaning the data, and end up with something that's outdated before you even begin your analysis. This is where combining Graph API data in Power BI changes everything. Take Teams data as an example. Graph API can pull detailed information about channel activity, meetings, and chat usage. Now imagine pairing that with sales performance data from your CRM. Your Power BI dashboard could tell you whether teams that engage more actively in collaborative channels tend to influence higher sales outcomes. Or let's say you track Teams meetings against sales opportunities in your pipeline. High meeting participation rates might correspond with better deal closure percentages. Without merging these two datasets, such patterns would remain hidden, leaving valuable insights untapped. Here's a concrete example. A sales manager wants to understand whether customer communication influences quarterly revenue growth. Using Graph API, they pull Outlook data to analyze email volume and average response times for high-value clients. Then they connect this data with their CRM to track revenue growth by account. The Power BI dashboard they create overlays email response rates with customer spending trends, revealing a clear pattern. Accounts with the fastest response times result in higher sales. In this case, combining Graph API data with CRM data doesn't just add convenience, it gives the manager actionable insights to improve response protocols and prioritize outreach. It's not just about identifying direct correlations. Combining diverse data sources also allows you to address larger operational questions. For example, say you're looking to improve efficiency across departments. Teams data from Graph API can show you which channels and meetings are the most active, while SharePoint insights reveal which files or resources are being heavily used. Now add expense and time tracking data into the mix. These might come from a platform like QuickBooks or an internal system. Using Power BI as the central tool, you could discover how heavily used resources in SharePoint impact meeting outcomes or project completion rates across teams. Suddenly, you're moving from siloed operational metrics to a fully integrated view of organizational efficiency. Another powerful use case is customer engagement. Let's say your business runs frequent Teams webinars or online meetings as part of its client engagement strategy. Pulling attendance information via Graph API is already a great way to measure participation rates. But what if you could pair that with website analytics from tools like Google Analytics? By linking attendee data with site engagement metrics, you might uncover that clients who attend certain webinars spend more time researching related materials on your website or convert at higher rates. This holistic view allows you to adjust and refine your outreach strategy based on what works best. Visualization makes these insights even more actionable. In Power BI, you're not just working with numbers. You're creating dashboards that provide an intuitive view of the relationships between different data points. Imagine a team's usage dashboard overlaid with sales data, showing spikes in collaboration during periods of high revenue growth. Or a SharePoint activity report paired with HR data revealing how specific teams use their time on projects. These kinds of dashboards allow decision makers to see the story behind the data, making it easier to act quickly and confidently. One of the unique benefits of combining data sources is how it enables predictive analysis. For example, if you're tracking Outlook email patterns with CRM sales trends, you can build a model in Power BI to predict the likelihood of a lead converting based on average response times. Or by analyzing Teams meeting data alongside SharePoint usage logs, you could forecast potential delays in projects based on past collaboration patterns. This sort of forward-looking insight helps your organization stay ahead, rather than always reacting after the fact. Another way integrated data drives better decisions is by surfacing inefficiencies that aren't immediately obvious. Let's look at an operations team responsible for vendor contracts. Their SharePoint libraries contain hundreds of documents related to procurement, but there's limited visibility into who's editing those documents, how often they're being accessed, and whether deadlines are slipping. By combining SharePoint data from Graph API with project management data from a tool like Jira, you might uncover a mismatch between workflow timelines and document approvals. For example, if procurement delays regularly coincide with limited file activity, it could signal a need for better communication or more defined responsibilities. Merging these data sets transforms fragmented workflows into actionable insights. This type of integration also expands the possibilities for client-facing reporting. Many businesses use Power BI dashboards to provide live updates or performance metrics for clients, whether it's campaign performance or project timelines. Adding Graph API data into those dashboards creates even richer and more valuable reports. For instance, a marketing agency could combine Teams collaboration data with client billing hours to show how internal efforts directly correlate with campaign milestones. Or a consulting firm might pair SharePoint activity data with external CRM updates to present a clear picture of how their work aligns with the client's success. What makes this so impactful is how these insights drive alignment across teams. When sales, operations, and customer support teams are all working with their own isolated data, it's easy for tasks and priorities to fall out of sync. But when you integrate Graph API data into a central repository like Power BI, you create a single source of truth where every team can see the broader context. They're not just looking at their own metrics, they're understanding how their work connects to everyone else's. For example, a sales manager might see how SharePoint activity aligns with progress on a key client account. Or an HR leader might notice which team's channels correlate with higher employee engagement scores. This shared visibility fosters collaboration and ensures that teams are working together rather than against each other. An important payoff of merging data sets is better decision-making. When you have integrated dashboards that show the relationships between collaboration, communication, and performance, your leadership team can make informed choices backed by data, whether it's reallocating resources, adjusting workflows, or addressing bottlenecks. The insights gained through integration empower leaders to make decisions with greater confidence. Instead of guessing, they're responding to what the data is saying. It's worth emphasizing that the unique power of combining data lies in the connections it reveals. When you unlock insights by merging Teams usage patterns, SharePoint collaboration trends, Outlook email metrics, CRM data, and even external sources like website analytics or finance systems, you start seeing relationships that could otherwise go unnoticed. It's not just about collecting more data, it's about making the data work harder for you by uncovering what truly drives success in your organization. Combining Graph API data with other sources doesn't just improve analysis, it creates opportunities for innovation. Take the example of a product team working to refine a new service. By analyzing customer feedback trends in Outlook along with collaboration metrics from Teams, the team might identify which discussions led to the most successful product iterations and repeat that process in the future. Ultimately, the ability to integrate Microsoft 365 data with external sources unlocks insights that drive better business outcomes. It connects the dots between collaboration, communication, and performance metrics, providing a holistic view of what's working and what needs improvement. Whether it's aligning teams, uncovering inefficiencies, or driving customer engagement, the results speak for themselves. Next, we'll explore the competitive advantage of taking these integrated insights further by building custom reports with Graph API. We'll look at how custom dashboards compare to basic built-in Microsoft 365 reports and why mastering this tool is key for advanced business intelligence. Let's move into that next. Custom reports, Graph API versus basic Microsoft 365 insights. How do Graph API reports compare to the built-in Microsoft 365 reports? Let's take a closer look at this question because the difference here is significant. If you've ever tried to pull insights from the default reporting tools available in Microsoft 365, they can only take you so far. Tools like the Teams Admin Center or SharePoint Analytics offer basic summaries, but they're limited in scope. They give you high-level overviews, like how many users are active or how many files are shared. While that's helpful, these reports are static. They don't allow you to customize what you are looking for or combine datasets to build a more detailed picture of your organization's performance. Let's say you're responsible for tracking collaboration trends inside Teams. A built-in usage report from the Teams Admin Center might show you metrics like the total number of channel messages sent over a month or the number of active users in a certain time frame. While those metrics are useful for understanding broad usage patterns, they don't give you deeper insights. For example, you can't see how chat engagement in a specific channel correlates with project milestones or whether specific teams are under-communicating. These kinds of questions require a level of customization that default reports simply don't offer. Similarly, SharePoint's built-in reports can tell you how many files are being edited or accessed, but they don't show you who is making the most contributions or which files are central to team collaboration. Without this level of detail, it's hard to identify which workflows are efficient and which ones are slowing down your teams. The frustration lies in knowing the data exists, because it's being generated every time users interact with Microsoft 365, but you can't get to all of it through basic reporting tools. The lack of depth and customization means you spend more time stitching data together manually, instead of focusing on high-impact analysis. This is where Microsoft Graph API steps in and completely transforms how you approach reporting. Instead of relying on static surface-level data, Graph API gives you full control over what you can access and how you analyze it. It pulls raw data directly from Microsoft 365 services like Teams, SharePoint, Outlook, and OneDrive, which means you're no longer limited to the predefined metrics of built-in tools. You can request exactly the data you need, combine it with other sources, and even automate that entire process so your insights are refreshed in real time. Let me give you an example. Suppose you want to create a detailed Teams usage report that tracks not just channel activity, but also meeting participation, chat engagement, and user interaction trends broken down by department. With Graph API, you can query data about specific Teams channels, pull meeting attendance logs, and even monitor reaction rates in chats. Then, by connecting this data to PowerBI, you're able to visualize all of it in one dynamic dashboard. In contrast, a default Teams admin report would only give you basic usage stats like total messages sent or the aggregate number of meeting participants. That's helpful at the surface level, but it doesn't answer deeper questions like whether meeting attendance drops off after certain times of the day, or which teams are leveraging collaboration tools the most effectively. Let's look at another scenario. SharePoint collaboration. A basic SharePoint usage report might tell you how many documents are active within a library and how often they're being updated. But imagine you want to know which files are most frequently shared internally versus externally, who's driving those interactions, and how that activity relates to deadlines for key projects. With Graph API, you can retrieve detailed file activity logs that show exactly who's editing, sharing, or accessing documents, down to the timestamp. Then you can combine that data with project timelines in Power BI to uncover patterns. For instance, you might discover that files with external sharing surge around the final stages of a project, indicating last-minute coordination with vendors or clients. These kinds of insights are simply not possible with built-in reports. Customization isn't just about answering specific questions. It's about tailoring insights to your organization's unique needs. Take email analytics as an example. A default Outlook report might highlight generic stats like the number of emails sent or received across the organization. With Graph API, you can go deeper by pulling data on email response times, customer communication trends, or even analyzing how internal versus external communication differs. Layering this data into Power BI allows you to visualize, for instance, the average turnaround time on client emails, enabling you to prioritize accounts that need more attention. It's this level of precision that sets Graph API apart from the basic tools in Microsoft 365. But it's not just about granularity. Graph API also shines in how it enables you to combine datasets that were previously siloed. One of its greatest advantages is the ability to unify Teams, SharePoint, and Outlook data in ways that reveal connections. For instance, you could analyze Teams meeting attendance alongside SharePoint file activity to see whether more collaborative teams are those that share and edit files most effectively. Or you could correlate email response times with Teams chat activity to identify where communication bottlenecks are affecting project timelines. The possibilities are endless when you're no longer limited by the constraints of standalone reports. Take a moment to picture how this plays out in practice. Imagine your organization wants to track employee engagement across departments. A basic usage report from Teams might tell you which channels are active. But using Graph API, you can combine Teams channel data with sentiment analysis from email or chat logs to get a clearer picture of how teams are feeling about their work. For example, adding sentiment metrics to Power BI dashboards might reveal that enthusiasm drops in specific channels during certain phases of a project. That's the kind of actionable insight that can only come from creating custom reports powered by Graph API. Speaking of dashboards, let's talk about the competitive advantage they provide. A well-designed Power BI dashboard built using Graph API data doesn't just display numbers, it provides an interactive, real-time view of your organization's operations. Imagine opening a dashboard that shows project progress, collaboration trends, and customer communication metrics all in one place. Decision makers can see how everything connects without toggling between multiple platforms or relying on disconnected summaries. This level of visibility allows teams to identify trends faster, spot inefficiencies, and adapt more effectively. It's not just reporting, it's strategic business intelligence that's tailored to the challenges you face. Why does this matter? Because in today's data-driven world, the ability to access deeper insights gives you an edge. Organizations that rely solely on built-in tools are often stuck in reactive mode, using static, outdated reports to make decisions. By contrast, businesses using Graph API for custom reporting move to a proactive approach. They are able to see what's coming, address challenges early, and make the most of opportunities. Whether you're analyzing team productivity, tracking external communication, or monitoring customer engagement, the level of customization Graph API provides gives you a significant advantage over competitors who settle for surface-level insights. One of the most compelling benefits of Graph API is that once your custom reports are set up, they become part of a centralized, automated process. Data flows seamlessly into your Power BI dashboards, refreshing automatically without manual intervention. This means your decision makers are always working with the most current information possible without wasting time gathering, cleaning, and updating data. The time savings and efficiency this brings are invaluable. Let's not forget the long-term value of mastering Graph API for reporting. As businesses increasingly move toward automation and data-driven decision-making, professionals who can build custom reports and dashboards with Graph API will play a critical role. Developing these skills not only enhances your organization's ability to adapt, but also sets you apart as someone capable of leveraging technology to its fullest potential. It's not just about producing better reports, it's about creating a culture of actionable, data-driven insights at every level of the business. Before we move on, let's summarize why Graph API-powered reporting is superior to what you get from default Microsoft 365 insights. First, it offers unparalleled customization, allowing you to tailor reports to your specific business needs. Second, it removes data silos by enabling you to combine data sets across platforms. Third, it transitions your organization from static, reactive reporting to real-time, proactive decision-making. And finally, it saves time by automating the data collection and analysis process, keeping your insights up to date without extra effort. These factors make Graph API an essential tool for businesses looking to unlock the full potential of Microsoft 365 data. In the next section, we'll look beyond reporting and dive into why Graph API represents the future of business intelligence. We'll explore how it aligns with modern trends in data integration and automation, and why it's becoming an indispensable skill for professionals who want to stay ahead in the evolving world of data analysis. Let's explore why Graph API isn't just a tool, it's a strategy for shaping the future of how we use data in business. Why Graph API is the future of business intelligence. Could Graph API be the missing link in your business intelligence strategy? With the rapid growth of data in modern organizations, many professionals are struggling to move beyond fragmented systems and isolated sources of information. Businesses today need tools that streamline access to this data while making it actionable. Tools that don't just collect data but actually transform it into meaningful insights. Graph API fits directly into this need by providing a unified, automated way to access the data hiding within your Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and more importantly, giving you control over how that data is used. Let's recap some of the key advantages we've covered so far. First, Graph API provides centralized access to Microsoft 365 services like Teams, SharePoint, Outlook, and OneDrive. Instead of juggling different admin portals or relying on scattered reports, you can use a single endpoint to query practically any key data point across the platform. Second, it offers unparalleled customization. This isn't a one-size-fits-all reporting tool. Graph API allows you to pull the exact data you need, whether you're analyzing chat engagement in Teams or tracking email response times in Outlook. Third, it integrates seamlessly with tools like PowerBI, enabling you to combine Microsoft 365 data with external sources, automate workflows, and generate real-time dashboards. Together, these features make Graph API a powerful ally for anyone wanting to improve collaboration, track performance, and uncover inefficiencies in their organization. Here's the challenge. Businesses are relying on more tools than ever before, and they generate enormous amounts of data. A report from the International Data Corporation IDC projects that by 2025, the world will be generating 175 zettabytes of data annually. The more data organizations create, the harder it becomes to extract meaningful insights. Many teams still rely on siloed reporting systems, where data from one department doesn't necessarily align with another. This not only wastes time, but also leaves decision-makers working with incomplete or outdated insights. For organizations committed to moving quickly, these inefficiencies can lead to missed opportunities. This is where Graph API steps in as a solution that aligns perfectly with the needs of modern businesses. The growing trend in business intelligence is shifting toward unified data access, real-time updates, and automation. Static reports no longer meet the demand for fast decision-making, and organizations are increasingly seeking tools that bridge the gaps between their systems. Graph API's ability to centralize information is a direct response to this trend. Instead of forcing teams to manually gather data from Teams, SharePoint, and Outlook separately, the API acts as the glue that brings everything together. When combined with analytics platforms like Power BI, it enables businesses to build entire ecosystems where data flows freely, empowering leaders to focus less on manual processes and more on strategy. This shift isn't just happening in theory, it's happening in real organizations across a variety of industries. For instance, a software development company used Graph API to streamline its project management insights by integrating Teams' usage data with their Jira task tracking system. They were able to monitor how collaboration in Teams channels correlated with the pace of completed tasks. They discovered that certain channels were highly active but weren't contributing to project completions. They were distractions. Using this insight, they restructured how channels were used for discussions, making communication more goal-oriented. Another example comes from a financial services firm that leveraged Graph API to analyze email response times and customer satisfaction scores. By pulling Outlook email metrics and pairing them with NPS, Net Promoter Score, data, they found that faster email response times had a direct impact on higher customer satisfaction. This insight allowed them to refine their email follow-up strategy and better allocate resources to support key clients. Real-world use cases like these reinforce how Graph API is moving beyond being just a data access tool. It's becoming a competitive differentiator. Companies that embrace its potential are able to outperform those stuck with static and siloed reporting. For individuals, understanding how to use Graph API isn't just about improving workflows, it's an opportunity for career growth. Business intelligence is evolving at a rapid pace, and professionals who can master tools like Graph API will be positioned as leaders in this transformation. Think about it. As organizations increasingly adopt data-driven decision-making, the ability to pull and analyze data from multiple sources is no longer a nice-to-have skill. It's essential. With its flexibility and scalability, Graph API fits neatly into the broader trends in automation, integration, and real-time data access that are redefining how businesses operate. For IT managers, mastering the API means building more efficient systems and automating manual processes. For business analysts, it means creating dashboards that uncover patterns and drive smarter strategies. For team leaders, it's a way to monitor collaboration and performance metrics without needing to rely on outdated reports. What ties all these roles together is that understanding Graph API provides a significant boost in how effectively you can use data to solve problems. Beyond individual roles, let's take a moment to think about long-term trends. Graph API isn't just a tool for today, it's shaping the future of how organizations integrate data into their decision-making processes. One key part of that future is automation. Professionals are moving away from spending time on tedious, repetitive tasks like gathering reports across platforms. Instead, they're automating these workflows so they can focus on interpreting results and making changes. Imagine having a dashboard in PowerBI that automatically updates itself every day with data from Teams, SharePoint, and Outlook, so you always have the latest insights at your fingertips. That's not just more efficient, it's transformative. Another major trend is the move toward democratized data access. Leaders no longer want to wait for reports manually created by IT. They want tools that allow employees across different levels of the organization to explore data themselves. Graph API plays a direct role in this shift. It provides organizations with the flexibility to create self-service dashboards that are easy to use but backed by powerful real-time data pipelines. This means decision-making isn't bottlenecked at the top, it's empowered at all levels of the business. While these trends are shaping how businesses use data, they're also creating broader career opportunities for those who understand how to leverage the tools behind them. Whether you work in IT, business intelligence, or team management, mastering Graph API is increasingly becoming a skill that sets professionals apart. Look at the trajectory of business intelligence tools over the past decade. Data analysts who learned tools like Power BI early on are now leading the charge in creating data-driven workplaces. Similarly, the next wave of leaders will likely be those who understand how to merge Graph API's powerful data access with systems like Power BI, SQL databases, or even external automation tools. For many professionals, Graph API isn't just a way to level up their current workflow, it's a way to future-proof their careers. As more organizations rely on automated processes and integrated systems, having the ability to centralize, customize, and combine data with tools like Graph API positions you as someone who adds meaningful value. It's not just about learning how to use an API, it's about understanding how to align technology with evolving business needs. So why does this matter today? Because the gap between those who use data effectively and those who struggle with disconnected systems is only growing wider. Organizations that fail to embrace modern tools like Graph API will likely find themselves relying on outdated reporting systems and inefficient workflows. On the other hand, those that implement unified data access and automated insights will gain a significant edge, whether it's through better decision-making, faster response times, or improved collaboration. And behind this success, there will always be data professionals and IT leaders driving these changes by mastering the tools that make it possible. Graph API is more than a tool. It's a strategy for the future of business intelligence. It's a way to unlock the full potential of Microsoft 365's data ecosystem while integrating insights across the broader business landscape. For businesses, it means achieving new levels of efficiency and insight. For professionals, it's a step toward staying ahead in an increasingly competitive and data-driven world. Whether you're looking to improve internal processes, better serve your customers, or advance your own career, this tool belongs at the core of your strategy. Now that we've explored why Graph API is positioned as a cornerstone for modern business intelligence, it's time to wrap things up. Let's move into the conclusion and talk about what steps you can take to start exploring this transformative tool today. Microsoft Graph API isn't just another tool, it's the key to unlocking the full potential of your Microsoft 365 data. Whether you're analyzing Teams usage, uncovering SharePoint collaboration patterns, or tracking email insights, Graph API connects the dots and provides clarity where it's often missing. It empowers you to move beyond static reports and piece together data, giving you the foundation to create actionable, real-time insights. Start exploring Graph API today and see how it transforms the way you work with tools like PowerBI. The hidden power of your organization's data is right in front of you. Are you ready to unlock it?